Amara sat on the edge of her bed, her hands cradling her swollen belly. The life growing inside her was a promise of hope, yet her heart was heavy with grief. The phone call had come just 2 days ago, shattering the fragile joy that had surrounded her pregnancy. Her husband, David, was a long-haul truck driver. He was her rock, her partner, and her best friend. They had planned everything together, the nursery with its soft yellow walls, the baby names scribbled in her notebook, the countless dreams of their future as a family of 3. But fate had rewritten their story in the cruelest way. David had been involved in a tragic accident on a rainy highway. The truck he was driving skidded on the slick asphalt and collided with a barrier. He didn't make it. The news had hit Amara like a tidal wave, drowning her in an ocean of sorrow. She had screamed, cried, and begged for it to be a mistake. But no amount of denial could change the truth. David was gone. As the days passed, the house felt unbearably quiet. His laughter no longer filled the rooms, his favorite coffee mug sat untouched on the counter, and his side of the bed remained cold. Amara felt as though a part of her had been ripped away, leaving behind a wound that no amount of time could heal. But in the silence, there was also a faint stirring. The baby kicked inside her, a gentle reminder of the life she carried. It was as if the child could sense her sadness and was trying to comfort her. Amara realized she couldn't give in to despair. She had to be strong, not just for herself, but for the little one who depended on her. David may have been taken from her, but a piece of him remained in their child. In the weeks leading up to her delivery, Amara threw herself into preparing for motherhood. She surrounded herself with family and friends, people who reminded her she wasn't alone. They painted the nursery, helped her sew through baby clothes, and held her when the tears refused to stop. When the day of her delivery arrived, Amara felt a mixture of fear and hope. As the contractions came, she clung to the memory of David's voice, his encouragement, and his love. Hours later, as she held her newborn daughter for the first time, Amara felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The baby's tiny fingers wrapped around hers, and in that moment, she saw David's eyes looking back at her. Though the pain of loss would never fully fade, Amara knew she had found a reason to keep going. Her daughter was a miracle, a testament to the love she and David had shared. And as she whispered her baby's name, Davina, she promised to tell her all about the father who would forever watch over them. The days following Davina's birth were a whirlwind of sleepless nights and tender moments. Amara marveled at how such a tiny being could bring so much light into her life, even in the shadow of grief. Every coo, every tiny yawn, and every soft cry reminded her of the love she and David had shared. Amara's mother moved in temporarily to help, filling the house with warmth and support. Friends came by with meals and offers to babysit, but Amara insisted on being there for every moment. Davina became her anchor, grounding her in the present and giving her a reason to face each day. Late one night, as Davina slept in her crib, Amara sat by the window, clutching a photo of David. She traced his face with her fingers, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I wish you were here," she whispered into the darkness. "She's so beautiful, David. She has your eyes, your smile. I promise I'll tell her everything about you. I'll make sure she knows how much you loved her." In the quiet, a soft breeze drifted through the window, rustling the curtains. It felt almost like a response, a gentle reassurance that David's love was still with them, even if he wasn't physically present. Over time, Amara began to rebuild her life. She returned to work, balancing her career with motherhood. It wasn't easy, but every challenge she faced reminded her of the strength she carried within. She found solace in journaling, pouring her thoughts and memories of David into pages she hoped to one day share with Davina. Years passed, and Davina grew into a spirited, curious child. She often asked about her father, her big brown eyes shining with wonder. Amara kept her promise, telling Davina stories of David's kindness, his sense of humor, and his dreams for their family. Together, they looked through photo albums, and Amara would smile through her tears as Davina traced her father's face, just as she had done so many nights before. On what would have been David's birthday, Amara and Davina started a tradition. They'd bake his favorite chocolate cake, light a single candle, and sit by the window, sharing stories about him. It was their way of keeping his memory alive, of ensuring that his love remained a part of their lives. Amara still missed David every day, but she had found a way to move forward without leaving him behind. Through Davina, his legacy lived on, a legacy of love, resilience, and the unbreakable bond of family. As Davina grew older, she began to carry pieces of her father in ways that surprised Amara. She had David's quiet determination and his knack for fixing things. At just 8 years old, Davina could take apart her toy car and put it back together, just as her father once did with old radios and appliances. One afternoon, as they sorted through a box of keepsakes Amara had kept from their time together, Davina found a small leather-bound journal. It was David's. Amara had forgotten it was in the box, tucked away after his death. "Mom," Davina asked, holding the journal carefully. "Can I read it?" Amara hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding. She hadn't read through all of it herself, unsure if she could handle the emotions it might bring. But looking into Davina's curious eyes, she realized this was another way for her daughter to connect with her father. "Yes, sweetheart," Amara said softly. "It's yours to read. But let's read it together." They sat on the living room couch, the journal between them. As Amara opened it, she caught David's familiar handwriting, bold yet slightly messy. The entries were simple, filled with thoughts about his day, plans for the future, and, most poignantly, his excitement about becoming a father. One entry brought tears to Amara's eyes. March 3rd. Amara is glowing these days. She doesn't know it, but I catch myself staring at her when she's not looking. I can't believe we're going to have a baby. I want to be the best dad I can be. I want our child to know they are loved every single day. If anything ever happens to me, I hope Amara will remind them of that." Davina looked up at her mother. "He was so excited about me, wasn't he?" Amara nodded, pulling Davina into a hug. "He was, sweetheart. He loved you before you were even born." From that day forward, the journal became a cherished treasure in their home. Davina often returned to it, reading her father's words and learning more about the man he was. When Davina turned 16, she surprised Amara with a project she had been working on for months. She had taken David's journal, combined it with the stories Amara had told her over the years, and created a book titled A Father's Love. "It's for us," Davina explained as she handed the finished book to her mother. "And for anyone who needs to know that love doesn't end, even when someone is gone." Amara couldn't hold back her tears. She hugged her daughter tightly, overwhelmed by pride and love. "Your dad would be so proud of you," she whispered. In that moment, Amara realized that while she and Davina had both lost David, they had also found something extraordinary, the strength to keep his love alive in their hearts, and the courage to share it with the world. The release of A Father's Love became a turning point not just for Amara and Davina, but for many others. Davina had poured her heart into the book, weaving her father's words with their family's journey of loss, healing, and hope. When they decided to publish it, neither of them anticipated the impact it would have. The book resonated deeply with readers. Letters and emails poured in from people who had lost loved ones, thanking Davina for capturing the enduring power of love. Amara and Davina were invited to speak at local events, where they shared their story and encouraged others to cherish their connections and memories. One evening, after an event at a nearby community center, an elderly man approached them. His eyes were filled with tears as he clutched a worn copy of the book. "I lost my wife years ago," he said, his voice trembling. "I thought I had no reason to go on. But your story, it reminded me that love doesn't disappear. It's always there, in the memories, in the little things. Thank you for helping me see that. Hearing words like this gave Amara and Davina a sense of purpose. They decided to start a foundation in David's honor, called David's Legacy. The foundation provided support for families coping with grief, offering counseling, resources, and workshops to help people navigate the difficult path of loss. As the years went by, Davina continued to grow into a remarkable young woman. She excelled in school, often drawing on the lessons of resilience and love she had learned from her mother and the memory of her father. She pursued a career in psychology, specializing in grief counseling, determined to help others as her family's story had helped so many. On what would have been David's 50th birthday, Amara and Davina stood before a crowd at the annual David's Legacy fundraiser. The event had grown from a small gathering to a major celebration of life and love, with hundreds of attendees. Amara took the microphone, her voice steady but filled with emotion. David may no longer be with us in person, but his love has never left us. It's in everything we do, in the lives we touch, and in the legacy we've built together. This foundation is not just about remembering him, it's about honoring the way he taught us to love fiercely and live fully. As the audience applauded, Davina joined her mother on stage, holding her hand. And it's about hope, she added, her voice strong. Hope that even in the darkest moments, we can find light. My dad taught me that through his words, and my mom taught me that through her strength. That night, as they walked home under the stars, Amara looked at her daughter with pride and gratitude. She thought of David, imagining him watching over them with a smile. Their journey had been painful and filled with challenges, but it had also been a testament to the power of love, a love that had carried them through loss, helped them heal, and inspired them to bring hope to others. Years passed, and the legacy of David's love continued to grow. Amara and Davina remained deeply committed to the work of David's Legacy Foundation. Through their efforts, they were able to fund scholarships for children who had lost parents, create grief support programs in schools, and even build a memorial garden in their town where people could come to reflect and heal. One day, as Amara sat in her kitchen sipping tea, she received an unexpected letter. It was from the driver involved in the accident that had claimed David's life. Over the years, Amara had often thought about him but had never reached out, unsure of how to bridge the gap between her grief and his likely guilt. The letter was heartfelt and apologetic. The driver, a man named Thomas, explained that he had carried the weight of that tragic day for over 2 decades. He had attended therapy and worked to rebuild his life, but he could never forget the family he had unknowingly impacted. He had read a father's love after hearing about it from a friend, and it had given him the courage to write to Amara. I can never undo what happened, Thomas wrote, but I want you to know that your story has helped me find a path to forgiveness, for myself and for life. Your family's resilience and love inspire me every day. If you're open to it, I'd like to meet and express my deepest apologies in person. Amara sat with the letter for hours, her emotions a mixture of surprise, pain, and compassion. She discussed it with Davina, who, now in her late 20s, had become her greatest confidant. What do you think, Mom? Davina asked gently. Amara sighed. I think I want to meet him. Not for me, but for David. He would want me to find peace, and maybe this is part of that. A month later, Amara and Thomas met at the memorial garden created by the foundation. Thomas was a quiet man, his face etched with years of guilt and sorrow. When he saw Amara, tears filled his eyes. I'm so sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I think about him every day. I can't imagine the pain I caused you and your daughter. Amara placed a hand on his shoulder. I've spent years trying to understand why that day happened, and I don't think I ever will. But I've also spent years learning how to carry David's love forward. Meeting you today, it's part of that journey. I forgive you, Thomas. Not because it's easy, but because it's what David would have wanted. The two sat on a bench, sharing stories and reflections. By the time they parted, there was a sense of closure that had eluded them both for so long. As Amara walked back home, she felt a profound lightness in her heart. She had carried so much pain for so many years, but now, it felt as though a weight had been lifted. When she reached home, Davina was waiting for her. Amara hugged her tightly, tears streaming down her face. "I think I finally understand what it means to let go," she said softly. Davina smiled. "And you've taught me what it means to hold on, to love, to hope, and to live fully." Together, they continued to honor David's memory, building a legacy that spanned generations. Through their love and resilience, they proved that even in the face of unimaginable loss, life could still bloom beautifully. And David's spirit remained with them, a constant reminder that love truly never ends.